The rain fell heavily over Brooklyn that night, washing the dirty streets in reflections of neon lights and police sirens far in the distance. New York never truly slept, but there were places in the city where even the criminals lowered their voices and avoided eye contact. One of those places stood hidden between abandoned buildings near the docks, an old Italian restaurant called Belladonna's. From the outside, it looked forgotten. Dust covered the windows. The sign flickered weakly above the entrance. Most people walked past it without even noticing. But beneath that restaurant existed a world built on fear, blood, and silence. Luxury black sedans slowly arrived, one after another, their headlights cutting through the rain like knives. Men in dark coats stepped out silently, their polished shoes splashing through puddles as they entered the building without a word. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke louder than a whisper. The atmosphere felt heavier than the storm outside. Because every man entering Belladonna's knew exactly why they had been called there that night. Someone had failed Salvatore Moretti. In the criminal underworld of New York, that was worse than betrayal. Salvatore Moretti was not the richest mafia boss in America, nor the most powerful, but he was undoubtedly the most feared. Older gangsters who had survived the wars, prison, and assassination still lowered their eyes when his name was mentioned. Stories about him spread through bars, casinos, docks, and underground clubs like ghost stories whispered after midnight. Some claimed he buried enemies alive. Others said he forced traitors to choose between their own lives and the lives of their families. Nobody knew which stories were true anymore because fear had transformed Salvatore Moretti into something larger than a man. He had become a nightmare. Downstairs, beneath the restaurant, hidden behind a reinforced steel door, the basement waited in silence. The room smelled of rust, cigarette smoke, and old blood. Water dripped slowly from broken pipes in the ceiling. A single lamp hung above a wooden chair, bolted to the floor. Shadows covered the corners of the basement like living creatures watching from the darkness. Every member of the organization knew about this room, though nobody dared speak of it openly. It was called the chapel because once someone entered, judgment always followed. That night, a young associate named Carlo Mancini sat tied to the chair. His face was swollen from the beating he had received earlier. Blood dripped from his lip onto his white shirt, while his breathing shook with panic. Carlo was only years old and had spent the last 6 years trying to climb the ranks of Moretti's empire. He had been loyal, efficient, ruthless when necessary, but 3 nights earlier, he made one mistake that sealed his fate. A shipment worth $15 million had disappeared during a transfer near the harbor. Nobody knew whether the police intercepted it or whether rival gangs had stolen it, but Salvatore Moretti did not care about excuses. In his eyes, failure itself was unforgivable. Around Carlos stood 12 men dressed in dark suits, watching silently like statues carved from stone. Some had worked for Moretti for decades. Others were killers with reputations, terrifying enough to make hardened criminals disappear overnight. Yet even these men avoided looking directly at Carlo, not out of pity, but because they feared what was about to happen. Then the steel door opened. The room instantly fell colder. Salvatore Moretti entered without hurry, removing black leather gloves, one finger at a time. He was in his late 50s, tall, calm, and perfectly controlled. His gray suit looked immaculate despite the storm outside. That was what terrified people the most about him. He never looked angry, never shouted, never lost control. Violence, for Moretti, was simply business. His cold eyes studied Carlo for several seconds, while the basement remained completely silent except for the dripping water overhead. Carlo finally broke. "Boss, please listen to me," he begged, his voice trembling. "The police were already there before we arrived. Somebody tipped them off. I swear to God I tried." Moretti slowly raised his hand. The entire room went silent again. Then he stepped closer until Carlo could see the reflection of the hanging lamp in the boss's dark eyes. "In this family," Moretti said softly, "failure is betrayal." Carlo's breathing became desperate. "I can fix this. Give me another chance. I'll recover the money. I'll find out who betrayed us." But Moretti stared at him without emotion. "You already had your chance." The boss turned toward the other men in the room. His calm voice echoed through the basement like a funeral prayer. "If weakness is forgiven once, it spreads through the entire family like cancer. Nobody moved." Nobody dared interrupt him. Moretti believed fear created loyalty stronger than money ever could. He wanted every man standing in the basement to remember this night for the rest of their lives. He wanted terror burned permanently into their minds. One of the guards suddenly placed a metal toolbox on the table beside Carlo. The sound alone made several men shift nervously. Carlo's eyes widened with horror as Moretti slowly opened the box. Inside were instruments no ordinary man should ever recognize. Carlo began crying, not loud at first, just quiet tears sliding down his bruised face as reality finally destroyed whatever hope he still had left. His body trembled violently against the ropes tied around his wrists. "Please," it whispered. "Please, don't do this." But mercy did not exist inside the chapel. The stories told afterward became legends across New York's criminal underworld. Some said Carlo screamed for over an hour. Others claimed the men upstairs in the restaurant turned the music louder to drown out the noise coming from below. One FBI informant would later describe that night as the moment fear completely consumed the Moretti family. By sunrise, Carlo Mancini was gone. No body was ever found. No police report was filed, and nobody inside the organization ever dared speak his name again. But something changed after that night. Fear spread through the city faster than bullets. Rival gangs stopped interfering with Moretti's operations. His own soldiers obeyed orders instantly, terrified of ending up inside the chapel. Even corrupt politicians and police officers became careful when dealing with him. Salvatore Moretti had transformed his empire into something unstoppable, an organization ruled not by loyalty, but by absolute terror.